in those instances. The highlight again, this one is fairly straightforward. Entry level, average, and experienced. This just is a little background of the source. They don't necessarily get into how many years people have worked for entry level or how many years they've worked for experienced. They're just looking at the range of wages and going more to the top of the range or the bottom of the range for entry versus experienced. So going on to showing another area how to do it, I'm going to go to the second one, and I'm going to show a little bit. I'm going to show one more way of doing this. So actually, one thing to highlight here, a common mistake on Wisconomy is understandably people hit this first home icon right here. You actually want to be at this bottom of the ribbon here. That said, if you ever find yourself leaving Wisconomy, it's just the Job Center of Wisconsin website. You can always find your way back by either typing it in, or again, if you were in the wrong place, this My LMI thing on the top will also bring you to where we were before. So again, that's maybe a little confusing, but just wanted to show that you're not going to break the internet by leaving Wisconomy, and just highlight that there are a few different common errors, and don't get frustrated if you end up going that way. You won't be the first person to do that. So going on and showing the second way that I wanted to highlight for looking at wages, it's this data tools button. The first one is really good and being pretty quick and simple and a good display. This one is good for giving you a little more detail, and giving you something that you can possibly download, or just or selecting multiple occupations at the same time. So we're going to show wages. So this has a route to all of our labor market information. And we go to the category, and we go to wages, and end up selecting in this case, it's the OEWS, which stands for Occupational Employment and Wage Survey. Never going to quiz you on what that actually means. Just know what you're looking at is wage rates by occupations. This acronym is the name of the program itself. In this case, I'm going to pick a few different geographies. I'm going to pick county, and I'm going to pick state. So this one gives you some options to be more than just the county level, and go a little higher and have a comparison. And then, so we'll do Wisconsin, Adams, and Milwaukee this again. And so the reason I'm showing Adams, not that I know that's not your area, but I just wanted to show like what to do if you don't get data. And then so these pre-populate. We want to go to the 6-digit level, and then we're going to select machinist here. You can either scroll your way down or type it into the selection. In this case, I'm going to type it in. This is what makes it really handy that we went through ONET, is that we actually do know a code. So I could have done by the name or the code. And then I'm going to actually select one more, just in case. Let's say you weren't sure if you're interested in machinists or CNC machinists. So in this case, I'll show a scroll down here. You could go all the way down the list and find it, or you can use a search engine. As you're kind of seeing, the search engine might be more useful.
So Tom, the main purpose of the ONET is that you can grab your codes off of ONET.
Yeah, either grab the
occupation code,
or also get a little bit of a understanding of what you're actually talking, what the.
Just to confirm that you're using the right occupation title for your search.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And so this is probably a good example of why I just kind of knew it as CNC. It's actually all the way spelled out. So so if I was just searching it, I might have got frustrated and not getting there. And then when I hit apply, you can pick hourly or annual. I prefer the hourly. The annual is actually just a summation of assuming a full-time at an hourly rate. So now this has an even wider range. So again, we were only looking at the average, the entry level, and the experience before. This one can go all the way through the 10th percentile to the 90th percentile. So meaning this is the top wage earners in the field. This is the bottom of the pay scale. But I think that having that range is really nice, and it kind of shows you. So just to highlight my irrelevant Adams County example, if you are missing the data, I recommend just going up to the state level and just getting a better and using that as a ballpark, knowing that it isn't going to be necessarily as local, but it gives you some idea of what's going on. So additionally, in this instance, we can compare the state of Wisconsin to Milwaukee County and see that the wage scales are actually pretty similar on both levels. And along with that, we can look at a difference between CNC machinists and just machinists. And if you wanted a little more detail on what the nuances were between that, that's where you could go back to ONET and see a little bit of a difference on what they are. So that's kind of my brief, hoping to get Mark a little bit more of exposure before he ducks out. So I'll actually take a little step back here, and just with what I showed right now, and before I go into another example where I walk through the same thing again, are there any questions or concerns popping up about this or about the data in general?
Well, Tom, I took some notes, so I'm going to go to Wisconsin and when I have some time. And this is a pretty cool data. This is exactly what I'm looking for.
Awesome. That's really good to hear.
And the percentile brackets you can tell an employee then, like, hey, I feel you're only here, let's say at the 25th percentile.
Yeah.
Show yourself, and you get up to the 20 or 75th, you're going to make a couple, $2-3 more an hour.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will throw the one caveat is that since the data does have to be collected, there is a lag on it. So if there is an industry change where wages go up, it's not necessarily going to get captured directly in this data source.
Yeah.
But you can look at it and say like, okay, well, things are going up and kind of maybe adjust accordingly, or think like, well, maybe we used to be able to pay an entry level person the 10th percentile. Now we have to go up to the 25th, just because that things are moving. So it's still within the range, but you might have to make an adjustment that way. And that's, I do like to be very upfront about that being a limitation of the data, but I think giving you a ballpark, and I think your example is spot on of just showing an employee like, hey, here's the data set for what everyone's making around the area. And here's the reason why you're more in the middle or more at the bottom than the top. I think is a really spot on way of looking at it.
Well, I'm glad I had a few minutes to pop in. Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and so I'll just go through, unless anyone wants to jump in with like a burning question, I'll go through another example of an occupation.
Do you kind of know when that lag is, how much lag time you have in that data? I mean, is it collected specifically annually at a certain time, or is it updated more frequently?
So it's updated annually, but I think they use multiple years of data to bring it in. So it's not just like a straight, this is the 2019 data. They'll bring in some information from years prior. And then the math behind it, I am not 100% sure on. But it's not like a straight three-year average, but they'll bring in a few different years of data. I want to say off the top of my head that it's 3. And then they'll come up with an estimate based on what they can collect. And that actually might be a good opportunity to highlight that there is some extra information on this. So if we do look at the programs, we can go and look at some detail on this occupational employment and wage statistics program. And then this has some links to collection methodology. And also the other end of it is if I can't answer, Sal is very accessible here, the person who coordinates this program. And so whether it's you go through me, I might end up asking Sal, or if it's a burning question about methodology that you can go to him about. So that I think that actually is a good thing to highlight. And so I'll go on to one more example. And I'm going to go through welders really quickly. So again, going back to our ONET and typing in welder. So this is kind of a good example because it seems really straightforward, but there's a little bit of a difference between welders, cutters, solderers, and brazers, or welding, soldering, or like there's some other things that might have some elements of welding in it. So if you're just going by the names, you might end up getting stuck with or you might end up accidentally selecting this machine setter occupation, when really what you're actually looking for is the welders itself. Or maybe you want to know about both. So in this case, again, it's relatively straightforward with welders. If we go back, you could also get the description on the machine setters that's a little bit different. This is probably another good thing to highlight, that depending on the size of your business, it's very likely that your employee might be both. And that is, again, to be totally upfront, because there's a limitation of trying to classify everything. But I still think it's a really good resource, that even if maybe they're doing elements of both, so it might be worth looking at both occupations. So now that we have a little bit of a background on what goes into that occupation, we'll go through that example one more time of how to get there in Wisconomy. So let's go back to our homepage here. And again, in order to get to that first wage tool that's just a little bit cleaner, maybe a little less detail, but really clean, we'll go to our My LMI tools. We're going to drag county wages, and then we're going to select welder. And then we'll select our counties. And sorry if I'm making you a little bit sick by going a little too fast and scrolling. That's one of the forgotten limitations of these Zoom webinars, is that you kind of forget that people are watching the screen and behind their screens all day. So we'll go Milwaukee, Waukesha, and let's go with Ozaki and Washington. And then again, so we can see our results here. In this case, there is, you can see a little bit of a difference by the counties. I do have some, I do recommend looking at a few, if you are using county data, I do recommend looking at a few different counties, just on the off chance that there might be one outlier in a county that's bumping things up or down in a certain direction. So I think it's wise that even if you are specifically in Milwaukee County or specifically in Waukesha County, to maybe look at both, or even then also look at the overall state average. I think it's helpful just to look at it a little bit more, just to get that full feel for whether what you're looking at kind of makes sense and passes your sniff test. Because I will say that I don't want to underestimate the value of you guys being subject matter experts in your field, and knowing that if something just looks totally off, it probably just is, there's probably a misinterpretation of what you're looking at, or whatever, or there's something different in what you're interested in versus what you're looking at. So I do want to highlight that really don't question yourself too much if you see something that's totally out of whack. Some things will be a little bit different, and that's why you look at the data. But maybe ask additional questions if it doesn't look exactly, if it looks a little bit like, if it does, like, again, I like to call the sniff test, if it looks totally out of line with what you'd expect as a subject matter expert in the area. And then so going through the example one more time, again, not clicking this home one on top, but clicking either the home icon or the labor market information icon below it. Common mistake, if you do it, you probably will do it, You won't be the first person. And then going in again to our dashboard method of getting in, or excuse me, back to our homepage, going into our data tools method of getting in. So again, we're going down to wages. We're selecting rates by occupation. We're going to look at the state and the county. We'll select Wisconsin. And in this case, just to limit the things that are on our screen, we'll just select Milwaukee County. You could very easily select the entire state of, like, every county in the state of Wisconsin if you are someone that likes to download things with spreadsheets. And when I do this, I will actually just show you where the download option is if that's more of your style. So Wisconsin. And Milwaukee County. Again, we're looking at the 6-digit level in this case. And then we have a code right here. You could scroll through all of it if you want it. You could search for you could search for a keyword, but in this case we have that number, so we'll use it. And let's also select that other one that we were talking about, just to see what the difference, see if there are differences. Again, finishing this out and selecting our rate, you can select both. The annual is just a multiplication of a number of hours worked in a year times the hourly wage rate. I feel like the hourly wage rate is a little more valuable, and about 90% of the time, that's the one I'm using when I'm helping someone out with this kind of request. So highlighting this page, and that we've looked at but looking at it a second time. I like looking at, like, even though you're specifically interested in the county, I do also think there's some value in looking at the state as well, and seeing that on average Milwaukee's a little bit higher, but has like a little bit higher. It's about the same on the lower end, but in this case, this is a pretty good example, because you can see that Milwaukee County on the higher end actually is a fair amount higher than the state. So at about $6 an hour more for this occupation. Along with that, looking at, like, okay, well, was I actually more interested in the machine setter, or is this person is this worker that I'm interested in, or this position that I'm trying to fill, is it actually a combination of both? And then maybe using that to kind of help out a little bit in figuring out what range you should use and give you some insights for that. Just to finish up the demonstration part before I just go on into a few more things I just wanted to mention, just that there is this dashboard option. I'm not going to show you how to get it, but if you go to these dashboards, there is a dashboard for the OEWS program, which just recently changed from OES to OEWS. So if I'm ever missing a letter, that's why. And seeing that there are some options here for visualizations. And this one will give you some visualization options. There's some bigger tables. The one thing I'll say that I forgot to show you is that there is a download button on that previous one I showed you, which can be very handy. And if it's something that you do want to use, either if you can find it or if you want me to walk you through it, I can. And highlight and just really look at another valuable resource and some ways of making it more accessible, I guess would be the best way to put that. Just trying to finish it up and wrap it up in the half hour, just for your time, even though I am available to stick around for questions. So I'm actually planned on that if it did run a little over. I'll say the other thing that's not considered in this is things that you're offering that aren't captured in a wage. So something like that might be that if it's a first shift versus a third shift or a second shift, if there is a preference, there may be a value on that. So if you're looking to fill a third shift position or some kind of a non-traditional shift, you may have to pay more. And that might be something you might have to look at and say, like, okay, well, for our production purposes, we need to have people going at this time. Does there gotta be a premium on that? Or vice versa, if you can offer things in a more traditional or more or more standard schedule, is that something you highlight when you're trying to recruit employees and say, yeah, our pay is about the same as these other companies, but your hours are more preferable. And so I do like to bring that up, that even though this is a presentation on wages, there is a lot of things that aren't captured in wages that go into an employee's decision for why they work where they work. And so I really don't want to, I want to make sure to emphasize that you don't forget about those other things when you're just looking at wages. Obviously the money really talks, and that's one of the more powerful things. But if there are other things you can offer, it is worth highlighting, with whether it's within your job postings or in your recruitment. Or the other end of that is if you know that there's something about your position that is overall less desirable, it might be something where you have to think about a premium for that. So that's really hitting on the main points that I wanted to show you. I know this was really a fly through. I really wouldn't expect all of you to be now wage experts and Wisconomy experts on how to find this data. So whether it's watching the recording again, or if there were any instructions, or just hitting me up directly, I'm more than happy to help. And I really hope that we can really get you going on being able to do this kind of thing on your own. So you're a little less in the dark, and you have some additional tools in your back pocket when you're working on hiring, or when you're working on working on retention or hiring. So are there any questions? And I know that was a fly through, but yeah, like I said, I'm more than happy to stick around and take questions as we come here.
Okay, well, I did record the presentation. I was a little late in getting the recording going, but I'm glad you went through that second full demonstration. So folks will be able to watch that, and I also will send along some notes about how to navigate through the two sites. I want to thank Tom for sharing his time with us today, and everybody that joined. Watch for your link to the presentation. I'll send it out as soon as possible. And if anyone wants to go ahead and ask Tom a question, as he said, he's happy to stick around for another minute or so. And then I will also include Tom's contact information when I send that recording out too. So
awesome. I was about to drop my email address into the chat, but that'll be a better way to do it, so you guys will have it.
Okay. Any other questions out there?
No, I don't think so. It's just really difficult right now with the changes, just with the demand of personnel to keep a handle on not trying to go beyond what is feasible, and yet still be able to maintain enough people in the building to get things done.
No, and I understand that. So when I guess when I say I understand, I guess I understand it in theory, and I get what you guys are seeing. So it's like one of those things I don't want to come into a presentation like this and try and pretend like this is the perfect data source and this is exactly what you need to do. So I look at that and it's kind of like, yeah, so that kind of goes into that point on make sure to be also know what you're seeing in the field, and really mesh between the data and your own expertise in the area.
No, but I do appreciate the tool, the knowledge about the tool. I wasn't aware that it was there. So, using other sources, this just gives another tool to be able to round out the reasoning behind putting that wage together.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's good. It's at least a place to start beyond just looking at what you're paying yourselves, but to go someplace and either confirm what you're doing, or maybe a little bit of a wake-up call about what you may need to do. So, all right. Well, thanks everybody.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Tom.